saya selama 6 tahun lagi cari pelayanan kepada rakyat saya yang kelas dunia. Alhamdulillah 14 triliun komitmen dari Australia, 20-an rumah sakit dan ratusan klinik yang canggih itu akan dihadirkan dalam tahun-tahun ke depan.
Dan kehadiran di Jawa Barat, khususnya di Depok, ini merupakan sebuah milestone karena berbagai hospital internasional beroperasinya sudah tidak mengejar Jakarta, tapi mengejar daerah yang populasi besar seperti Jawa Barat.
We're here to work with everybody that's involved in healthcare delivery in Indonesia to lift that standard, to be able to provide more care and better care to all Indonesians.
Teknologi mengubah dunia dan cara kerja, termasuk menggunakan teknologi untuk mengakses pelatihan terbaik dari wilayah manapun di dunia. IA Skills Exchange menghubungkan bisnis Anda dengan berbagai kursus dari penyedia pelatihan Australia dan menyediakan pelatihan khusus bagi tim Anda sesuai permintaan. Anda bisa memilih dari program mikro kredensial, kursus pendek, atau program panjang sesuai kebutuhan secara daring atau luring. Anda pun bisa meminta bantuan pakar untuk mendesain khusus pelatihan sesuai kebutuhan. Kursus tersedia dalam berbagai topik, mulai dari keamanan siber, perhotelan, administrasi bisnis, keterampilan digital, layanan kesehatan, dan masih banyak lagi. Semuanya tersedia dalam bahasa Indonesia dengan anggaran yang dapat disesuaikan. Majukan bisnis dan akses pelatihan kelas dunia bagi staf Anda. Hubungi Skills Exchange.
Saya selama 6 tahun lagi cari pelayanan kepada rakyat saya yang kelas dunia. Alhamdulillah 14 triliun komitmen dari Australia, 20-an rumah sakit dan ratusan klinik yang canggih itu akan dihadirkan dalam tahun-tahun ke depan.
Dan kehadiran di Jawa Barat, khususnya di Depok, ini merupakan sebuah milestone karena berbagai hospital internasional beroperasinya sudah tidak mengejar Jakarta tapi mengejar daerah yang populasi besar seperti Jawa Barat.
We're here to work with everybody that's involved in healthcare delivery in Indonesia to lift that standard to be able to provide more care and better care to all Indonesians.
Recording in progress.
Teknologi mengubah dunia dan cara kerja, termasuk menggunakan teknologi untuk mengakses pelatihan terbaik dari wilayah manapun di dunia. IA Skills Exchange menghubungkan bisnis Anda dengan berbagai kursus dari penyedia pelatihan Australia dan menyediakan pelatihan khusus bagi tim Anda sesuai permintaan. Anda bisa memilih dari program mikro kredensial, kursus pendek, atau program panjang sesuai kebutuhan secara daring atau luring. Anda pun bisa meminta bantuan pakar untuk mendesain khusus pelatihan sesuai kebutuhan. Kursus tersedia dalam berbagai topik, mulai dari keamanan siber, perhotelan, administrasi bisnis, keterampilan digital, layanan kesehatan, dan masih banyak lagi. Semuanya tersedia dalam bahasa Indonesia dengan anggaran yang dapat disesuaikan. Majukan bisnis dan akses pelatihan kelas dunia bagi staf Anda. Hubungi Skills Exchange.
Saya selama 6 tahun lagi cari pelayanan kepada rakyat saya yang kelas dunia. Alhamdulillah 14 triliun komitmen dari Australia, 20-an rumah sakit dan ratusan klinik yang canggih itu akan dihadirkan dalam tahun-tahun ke depan.
Dan kehadiran di Jawa Barat, khususnya di Depok, ini merupakan sebuah milestone karena berbagai hospital internasional beroperasinya sudah tidak mengejar Jakarta tapi mengejar daerah yang populasi besar seperti Jawa Barat.
We're here to work with everybody that's involved in healthcare delivery in Indonesia to lift that standard to be able to provide more care and better care to all Indonesians.
Teknologi mengubah dunia dan cara kerja, termasuk menggunakan teknologi untuk mengakses pelatihan terbaik dari wilayah manapun di dunia. IA Skills Exchange menghubungkan bisnis Anda dengan berbagai kursus dari penyedia pelatihan Australia dan menyediakan pelatihan khusus bagi tim Anda sesuai permintaan. Anda bisa memilih dari program mikro kredensial, kursus pendek, atau program panjang sesuai kebutuhan secara daring atau luring. Anda pun bisa meminta bantuan pakar untuk mendesain khusus pelatihan sesuai kebutuhan. Kursus tersedia dalam berbagai topik, mulai dari keamanan siber, perhotelan, administrasi bisnis, keterampilan digital, layanan kesehatan, dan masih banyak lagi. Semuanya tersedia dalam bahasa Indonesia dengan anggaran yang dapat disesuaikan. Majukan bisnis dan akses pelatihan kelas dunia bagi staf Anda. Hubungi Skills Exchange.
Saya selama 6 tahun lagi cari pelayanan kepada rakyat saya yang kelas dunia. Alhamdulillah 14 triliun komitmen dari Australia, 20-an rumah sakit dan ratusan klinik yang canggih itu akan dihadirkan dalam tahun-tahun ke depan.
Dan kehadiran di Jawa Barat, khususnya di Depok, ini merupakan sebuah milestone karena berbagai hospital internasional beroperasinya sudah tidak mengejar Jakarta tapi mengejar daerah yang populasi besar seperti Jawa Barat.
We're here to work with everybody that's involved in healthcare delivery in Indonesia to lift that standard to be able to provide more care and better care to all Indonesians.
Halo, Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As we're about to start our event, please come into the room after you finish your breakfast. Thank you.
Teknologi mengubah dunia dan cara kerja, termasuk menggunakan teknologi untuk mengakses pelatihan terbaik dari wilayah manapun di dunia. IA Skills Exchange menghubungkan bisnis Anda dengan berbagai kursus dari penyedia pelatihan Australia dan menyediakan pelatihan khusus bagi tim Anda sesuai permintaan. Anda bisa memilih dari program mikro kredensial, kursus pendek, atau program panjang sesuai kebutuhan secara daring atau luring. Anda pun bisa meminta bantuan pakar untuk mendesain khusus pelatihan sesuai kebutuhan. Kursus tersedia dalam berbagai topik, mulai dari keamanan siber, perhotelan, administrasi bisnis, keterampilan digital, layanan kesehatan, dan masih banyak lagi. Semuanya tersedia dalam bahasa Indonesia dengan anggaran yang dapat disesuaikan. Majukan bisnis dan akses pelatihan kelas dunia bagi staf Anda. Hubungi Skills Exchange.
Saya selama 6 tahun lagi cari pelayanan kepada rakyat saya yang kelas dunia. Alhamdulillah 14 triliun komitmen dari Australia, 20-an rumah sakit dan ratusan klinik yang canggih itu akan dihadirkan dalam tahun-tahun ke depan.
Good morning, everyone. As we're about to
Dan
start,
kehadiran
everyone
di
please
Jawa
have a
Barat,
seat. Thank
khususnya
you.
di Depok.
Good morning, everyone. Great to see you here today. Thank you for coming to the Virtual Manufacturing and Electric Mobility Business Forum. My name is Hayatun Nafisa, Project Officer of Advanced Manufacturing and Services at Catalyst, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all here today at Grand Hyatt. Selamat pagi, Bapak Wahyu Wijayanto, Director of Industry, Tourism and Creative Economy at the Ministry of National Development Planning, who is joining us online today. Also, a warm welcome to Pak Simon Anderson, Counselor of Economic and Trade at Australian Embassy in Jakarta. Catalyst would also like to thank Pak George Marantika and the team at the IABC for the opportunity to again collaborate. The past 3 days at the IABC conference have been fantastic, and we look forward to the next conference with AIBC down in Australia. Thank you as well to See Today, our official media partner for this event. Ladies and gentlemen, the words virtual and manufacturing may not often be used together, but this morning, we'll make a case as to why it would make sense. Add to that electric mobility, and we'll have an engaging discussion. For those in the room, please feel free to grab coffee, tea, and breakfast. And for those joining us online, there will be a sign language interpretation as well. So without further ado, to officially kick off our gathering today, let us welcome Pak Tim Stapleton, Advisor to AIBC, to give a few words of opening remarks. Pak Tim, the floor is yours.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for the very warm introduction. I'm delighted to be here today on behalf of the IABC board and on behalf of the National President of the IABC, George Marantika, who couldn't be with us today because he's got some commitments related to it. So another very good news story in the bilateral relationship, which was the soft opening of Western Sydney University's campus in Surabaya. But I'm really delighted to be here on behalf of the board, and I won't do what Pat George likes to do, which is to single individuals in the room and make them stand up. But I did just want to make note of one board member who's with us today, which is Ben Giles, the Treasurer of IABC. Thank you, Ben. IABC is delighted to co-host this event today with Catalyst. I know the IABC very much values the collaboration that we have with Catalyst, and Catalyst's sponsorship of IABC, one of many valued sponsors of the Indonesia-Australia Business Council. And I'm really interested to dive into the discussion today. Those of you that have been with us for the first 3 days of the Indonesia-Australia Business Council conference will know that there's been a really strong focus on issues like the green transition and the opportunities for Australian and Indonesian businesses to collaborate. And you'll also know, including from Ambassador Siswo Pramono's remarks yesterday, virtual remarks yesterday at the conference, that there's a really strong interest between both governments in pushing forward on how we collaborate on Indonesia's EV production ecosystem, including electric mobility. So I'm fascinated to get into today's discussion, and so pleased that we have a distinguished panel of speakers to hear from, including from my friend Pak Rania Haryanto. Great to have you here today representing Electra, but also great that we've got representatives from Telexi EV, Electrum, Nuco Automotive, and MTI, Masyarakat Transport Indonesia as well for the panel discussion. So with that, let me just say once again, IABC is delighted to welcome you here today and to co-host this event with Catalyst. Thank you very much, and really looking forward to getting into it. Cheers.
A little bit about Catalyst. We're here today due to the Indonesia-Australia Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, or the IA-CEPA. And in that context, there's a line of work specific to advanced manufacturing in which both countries are seeking to support better alignment. Pak Paul Bartlett, the director of Catalyst, will have something to say before we move on. I'll turn over to Pak Paul now.
morning, selamat pagi, everybody. Let me start by acknowledging our friends from the Australian Embassy and from IA-CEPA, Pak Tim Stapleton, Jonathan Gilbert, Simon Anderson, and Renee and many others. Thank you very much for your strong support this morning. Also from the IABC, from Ben Giles, other colleagues from AIBC, good to see Jennifer Matthews, still here after 4 days, Jennifer, and Bapak Ibu sekalian, thank you very much for coming. I'd also like to welcome and acknowledge Bapak Wahyu Wijayanto, Director of Industry, Tourism and Creative Economy at Bappenas, who will be joining us online. So it is a pleasure and honor to welcome you all to the Virtual Manufacturing and Electric Mobility Business Forum. Catalyst was established to support the implementation of IA-CEPA, the Indonesia-Australia Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. We are an economic business development program, and our mandate is to increase bilateral trade and investment between Indonesia and Australia. So far, we have spent over $20 million on Australian dollars on activities to directly support businesses from both countries to increase trade and investment in the other country and build those commercial partnerships between the two countries. We work to improve market access, supporting both governments to implement the IA-CEPA, as well as increase trade and investment in sectors such as agri-food, advanced manufacturing, which is why we're here today, services, and skills. Today's forum is the second we have conducted in the advanced manufacturing sector. Last year, we looked at specific opportunities for electric vehicle charging. In this forum, we're looking at opportunities for virtual manufacturing in electric mobility. This draws on Australia's strength in innovation and design and Indonesia's very evident manufacturing capability. As we embark on this journey today, I encourage you all to engage in meaningful dialogue and ask pointy questions to the people that will be on the stage. I hope that the discussion that we have here today will get you thinking about the ways in which these business collaborations can materialize and develop new business partnerships between the two countries. When that comes to fruition, Catalyst will be here on standby to support those businesses in both countries and hopefully partner with many of the people in the room here today. The Virtual Manufacturing in Electric Mobility report, which will be launched today, is not just another paper. Really, the purpose of that is to stimulate conversation. It answers the question, why Indonesia as the destination for Australian businesses in the EV sector, and explains what Indonesia has to drive this rapidly changing industry forward. I wish you all a very productive conversation and hope that many of you will forge new connections between Indonesia and Australia. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Pak Paul, for the remarks. We also have online Pak Wahyu Wijayanto joining us from Zoom, the Director of Industry, Tourism, and Creative Economy from Bappenas. Silakan Bapak, the floor is yours.
Terima kasih Bapak Ibu. Good morning Bapak Ibu sekalian. Apakah suara saya jelas, Mbak? Is it my voice clear there?
Jelas, Pak.
Oke, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, Pak Tim Stapleton, Minister Chancellor from the DFED, Mr. Paul Bartlett, Catalyst Director, Mr. Simon Anderson, Counselor from the Fed, and Mr. David Mitchell, Catalyst Market Integration Lead Advisor, Bapak Ibu sekalian, honorable panelists, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, please allow me to express my appreciation to the Catalyst team for conducting this virtual manufacturing in electric mobility business forum. I'm delighted to welcome the gathering of participants in front of me through online. We are here today to engage in a discussion about the potential cooperation on the electric mobility manufacturing between Indonesia and Australia. Ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia has a vision of becoming a high-income country before celebrating its 100th anniversary of independence in 2045. Economic transformation is needed to escape from the middle income trap and provide solid ground to achieve the vision of 2045. To achieve this, we start by downstreaming natural resources and strengthening research, innovation, and our labor productivity. Ladies and gentlemen, industrialization is one of the super priority agenda in our economic transformation. The policy direction is to continue the downstreaming of industries based on prime natural resources, skilled, labor-intensive, technology-intensive, and also innovation-oriented and export-oriented. Along with this strategy, Indonesia will focus on increasing product complexity toward medium high-tech industries and also innovation-based industry. Indonesia priority industry will also include electric vehicle as a medium high-tech industry. Ladies and gentlemen, EV adoption in Indonesia recently has been increasing, and data indicates that the automotive industry has great potential for growth in the future. To be able to play part in EV global value chain, Indonesia is developing the EV value chain from upstream to downstream with the global players in various segments. Indonesia welcomes the global players to contribute in the development of the domestic EV value chain. Ladies and gentlemen, Bapak Ibu, IA-CEPA Catalyst have actively support Indonesia's industrial development, and since it was ratified and became effective in July 5th, 2020, Catalyst has carried out many activities, especially related to industry, including virtual manufacturing in electric mobility forum we held today. This forum will provide Australian investor with a comprehensive understanding of the investment opportunities in Indonesia's electric vehicle market. And we hope that this meeting would serve as a starting point for Australia and Indonesia to exchange further business opportunities. We are looking forward to witness future meetings ignited by this forum leading up to the signing of an Australia investment agreement in the Indonesian EV industry. Thank you, Bapak Ibu sekalian, ladies and gentlemen. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Wahyu, for the remark. After hearing the Indonesian government remarks, it's not complete if we don't listen to the Australian government. So from the Australian government side, we welcome Pak Simon Anderson, Councillor of Economic and Trade. The floor is yours, Pak. Thank you.
Selamat pagi semua. I'd first like to thank Bapak Wahyu Wijanto, Director of Industry and Tourism Creative Economy at Bapenas, for his words, and acknowledge in this room the presence of a lot of our friends and colleagues from the Indonesian Ministries of Industry, Transport, Energy and Mineral Resources, and the Ministry of Investment. A special acknowledgement also of our friends in the IABC and the AIBC, and a thank you to Catalyst for putting this together. And of course, all of those online, including those back in Australia, all of the businesses that are interested in advanced manufacturing opportunities in Indonesia welcome. During the ASEAN summit this year, it's now 2 months ago, I think, Prime Minister Albanese launched Nicholas Moore's Southeast Asia Strategy to 2040. This strategy recognised the vital significance, the strategic and economic importance as well of Southeast Asia to Australia's future. And of course, within Southeast Asia, the fastest growing economy is Southeast Asia is the fastest growing region in the world, and within Southeast Asia, Indonesia is the largest economy. Indonesia's size, growth rates and proximity to Australia represent some significant opportunities for Australian businesses. The Southeast Asia strategy identifies some of these opportunities, one of which is the green energy transition. The current global green energy transition is presenting governments and businesses everywhere with a once-in-a-century chance to rethink the way we approach extractive industries, energy generation, transport and manufacturing. Both President Jokowi and Prime Minister Albanese have acknowledged this, and they've agreed that both governments in Indonesia and Australia should cooperate and collaborate more on Indonesia's efforts to develop its EV ecosystem, as Bapak Wahyu mentioned. This of itself highlights a potential opportunity for Australian businesses to consider manufacturing in Indonesia. Indonesia is focused on growing its manufacturing sector, and as we heard from Bart earlier, Indonesia is the 10th largest manufacturing nation in the world. Manufacturing employs more than 20% of its working age population and accounts for almost a quarter of Indonesia's GDP. The size and capability of this workforce, combined with Indonesia's commitment to clean energy technologies, presents significant opportunities for businesses, for Australian businesses, that is, with complementary skills in design and innovation, who are seeking manufacturing capabilities offshore. This morning, you'll be hearing from emerging Australian companies in this space, from new entrants building factories for electrolysers, such as Fortescue, and leaders in iron flow batteries, energy storage Australia, Asia Pacific. You'll also be hearing more about some innovative companies in electric mobility, such as Fons Moto, Savic Motorcycles, and new EV manufacturers such as Bortana, Zero Automotive, and Janus Electric. These companies add to existing manufacturers such as Tinda Solar in South Australia and Energy Renaissance in Tomogo in New South Wales. What you'll also be hearing more about is where and how Australian businesses seeking to prototype, scale up or produce parts and components can utilise Indonesia's manufacturing capability. I'm really pleased that the Australian government is able to support this session this morning and bring you all together through Catalyst. And as Buck has explained and Paul has explained, Catalyst is a really great vehicle that the Australian government and Indonesia government share to boost our cooperation under the IA-CEPA and increase our bilateral trade and investment. So with that, thank you very much, and I wish you all a very fruitful discussion.
Thank you, Pak Simon, for the remarks. Before we get to the exciting part, we would like to invite all the panelists and Pak Simon, Pak Tim, and Pak Paul to join us for a photo session first. Pak David Mitchell, of course. Bu Indra. All the panelists also join. Pak Andi. Thank you all. Now to the exciting part. Ladies and gentlemen, this morning we convened to discuss new ideas to rethink the way we approach energy generation, transport, and manufacturing. Just what that means in the context of the Indonesia-Australia bilateral economic space. Please welcome Dr. David Mitchell, Lead Advisor for Market Integration at Catalyst.
We're going to arrange the chairs, I think, because there's a presentation. Thank you for coming all today. It's really nice to see the room full. And before I start, I'd like to acknowledge that even though everybody says this is my event, the people who actually really do all the work are the Catalyst Comms team, and they are absolutely fantastic. So Fissa and Farah and Andini and Addis and Sondang, who are all around the room with all mic'd up organising things, they are absolutely responsible for making sure that this thing happens. And I just get to stand up at the front and enjoy. I thought I'd give a very brief introduction about the way that Catalyst sort of works in practice. You've heard from Park Simon and Park Paul and Park Wahoo about the sort of expectations that our governments have, and I'm the guy that sort of has to make it work on the ground. And I'm a very project-based person, and I listen to, yes, there's a green transition and the economy is changing, and I think, okay, but what are we doing and what colour is it? And Catalyst does two sort of different styles of engagement. Sometimes we work very directly with a business. We finance something that helps move a project along to help de-risk it, as we've actually done a number of times. And you know, that's a very direct piece of work that we do with one company. So we might do a bankable feasibility study for a hospital to help move that forward. We've just started a piece of work with Gunung Rajapaksi and Fortescue on green hydrogen. That's a technical feasibility study. It's quite complex and it's extremely directed. And at other times, we know that a sector is interesting. We think that, you know, digital finance in the clean economy is an interesting sector, but we're not quite sure how to engage. We think that two-wheel EVs is a fantastic opportunity for Australia. We think that the green energy transition is, you know, really important. It's a huge value pool between Australia and Indonesia, but exactly what would you do? If you had $20 million today, how would you start it? So today's event is the sort of thing that we try and do to crack open some of these sectors that we know are important, but we're not quite sure how to engage. We did an advanced manufacturing business forum last year around electric vehicle charging, and I see Puck Ellie is here. He was at last year's event, so I'm delighted that he came back. We remember you, Puck. We remember you. So this is about virtual manufacturing, and it starts from the sort of rather naive concept that Australia is full of fantastic innovators, but we can't make anything, and that Indonesia is also, of course, full of fantastic innovators, but actually has an enormous amount of manufacturing capability. They make lots of cars, they make lots of two-wheel bikes, they make lots of other things. So today we're trying to explore that space. And to do so, we commissioned Deloitte to do a piece of work for us, and we restricted it to virtual manufacturing in the electric mobility sector to give it some focus. And the summary of that report's available outside, but it will be released today, and I encourage all of you to read it. And it was a very interesting piece of work for us, and we discovered things that we didn't know before. So I think that that's well worthwhile. And now I'd like to ask Nathan Jones, who did the work for Deloitte, to present the findings to us. And then after that, we'll have a panel discussion. And like all of these events, this time last week, we were struggling to find enough panel members, and now we have a really great lineup, and I'm delighted to welcome them all today, and we'll have a discussion. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Nathan Jones to present the report.
Great. Thank you very much for that introduction, David, and good morning to everyone in the room. Apologies I could not be there this morning. I just wanted to spend a little bit of time just giving you a high-level overview of this report that we recently put together on the opportunities for Australian businesses looking to manufacture in Indonesia, particularly in the electric mobility sector. It was certainly an interesting ask, and as David sort of alluded to just before, I think we all learned a few things, both about the Indonesian manufacturing capability, but also where the world and the region is in fact heading when we think about that electric vehicle value chain. So everything from the raw materials through to production of batteries, production of component parts and the assembly of the vehicles themselves, both cars and micro-mobility. It was actually a real eye-opener for us, and it really showed that Indonesia is increasingly becoming a more important, if not outsized player in this particular part of the automotive market. So I won't take up too much of your time, but just to start to give you a little bit of an overview, and apologies, if we could just move to the next slide. Lovely, thank you. So you can see from the left side of the screen, the chart, perhaps unsurprisingly to many, shows the global electric mobility market is on track to reach 1.5 trillion by 2028. What was interesting here is that detailed, for an industry that's growing quite rapidly and has captured the attention of many governments and people, across the world, detailed stats on the industry's growth were actually somewhat difficult to come by. But what was clear is that there are a range of trends that you can point to that confirm electric vehicle growth. First of all, we're seeing increased and improved government incentives for purchasing an EV. In Australia, for instance, some states offer $3,000 rebate if the vehicle purchase price is below a certain threshold. Other states have removed stamp duty on all EVs, while the federal government here has removed customs duties on battery electric vehicles and plug-in electric vehicles. We're also seeing developing countries accelerating their EV adoption, largely encouraged by their own government incentives to stimulate the EV industry, in part to support the energy transition and efforts towards net zero, but also as a potential solution to, traffic chaos and overcrowding on roads. Countries in Europe, along with the UK, USA, China, are really driving phenomenal growth already. But with many of those countries having committed to phasing out sales of petrol and diesel cars over the next sort of 10 to 15 years, we start to see a clearer trajectory and opportunity for not only EV cars, but also demand for smaller and more personalised micro-mobility vehicles. So while demand for cars remains strong and the infrastructure that supports them is also growing at a rather rapid pace, the continued investment from leading global automotive companies into more diverse streams of electric mobility alongside emerging startups supports the view that there is a future in Australia and abroad for a range of electric mobility solutions. So one of the things that we found was that many larger automotive companies are not just making cars, they're also making micro-mobility vehicles. Mercedes-Benz have an e-scooter on the market. In fact, 3 of them, including an AMG version, if you can believe it. Hummer have an e-bike. We've seen a surge in the popularity of personal electric micro-mobility here in Australia. In 2022, it was estimated more than 100,000 units of micro-mobility vehicles were sold in Australia, an indication is that demand comfortably outstrips supply. So the sense, certainly outside Australia and increasingly here, I would suggest, given traffic chaos in most of our capital centres and even regional centres, is that electric cars, while they're a very positive step forward from petrol and diesel versions, they're still somewhat oversized. And for most urban journeys, they don't quite solve the problem of overcrowding. So when we talk about alternative to cars, we're talking about electric micromobility. So by comparison, light electric vehicles such as e-bikes, side-by-sides, trikes, and scooters are being seen as mostly safe, affordable, efficient, and compact. Some are even transportable in a backpack. We know that one major issue we've got when developing smarter mobility concepts for urban areas is closing the gap from home to mass transport, or what we call the last stop to the office. So that's known as the last mile problem. And so for that reason, electric micro vehicles are becoming increasingly popular. Mono wheels, personal transporters, e-bikes, cargo bikes, and e-scooters. While the regulations that permit these things vary from city to city, particularly here in Australia, where the law is very much still catching up to some of these forms of mobility, many micro vehicles are usable in bike lanes and pedestrian areas, and certainly many of our Asian neighbours are well ahead of us, and the use of micro mobility solutions is far more prolific and certainly accepted. So while I'm not here to, make the case for why someone should think about why they should come up with an innovative micromobility concept or where the opportunity lies, I'll leave that to people far more knowledgeable and perhaps even innovative than me. I trust that many people in this room, or you're connected to people who already have a passion for this and know their market. And I wanted to provide just at least a sense of what is the starting point. We weren't tasked here with creating a report on a nebulous random topic. We've already heard this morning, the importance of net zero. We've already heard about the opportunities for, electric vehicles and electric micromobility. We've already had some conversation at a high level around the extended value chain and where Indonesia is playing in this space. So we know the opportunity is there. This is where the world is heading, and I think we're all mostly, on board with that. The question now is, where can you go to make this a reality? And for us, it was about investigating the possibility that Indonesia, as a trading partner and a neighbour to Australia, could just be that place. If we could just skip to the next slide, please. So if you're an Australian business, how could you think about doing this? If you're early in your production cycle, if you're maybe a startup and you have an idea that you want to turn into a prototype, Indonesia is certainly one place that you could look to do this, and the reasons for that we'll go into in a moment. But standing up an entire technical prototype that you can test in an actual workable environment is sort of the first case study there. The second one is component parts. So when we think about all the different elements that make up a vehicle or a micromobility solution, having individual component parts of that vehicle or of that solution made within Indonesia is another thing that we can look at here. And then of course the other is scaling up production. So when we're thinking about maybe someone who is already making 20, 50, 100 units of something here onshore in Australia, but you see an opportunity in the market to really scale that, perhaps demand outstrips, supply, Indonesia again is the place that you can do that. So taking the component parts and creating the end-to-end assembly for the vehicle, for the innovative solution. So those are kind of three ways that you might think about it. And we know that this is working because we've already seen automotive leaders already doing this. in Indonesia. And Hyundai was an interesting case study that we came across. From August of next year, Hyundai are going to be a first mover in the EV manufacturing space in Indonesia. So their entire production line of the Ioniq 5, which is one of their electric vehicles, is going to be entirely made in Indonesia, and more than 40% of the component parts will be locally made in Indonesia to take advantage of a significant tax incentive, where if currently at least 40% of your vehicle is made up of local parts, there are significant concessions for that manufacturer. So we're seeing the likes of Hyundai, we expect VW, maybe even Tesla, others to come on board, recognizing the value to them of shifting production to Indonesia. If we could just shift to the next slide, please. Lovely, thank you. So a couple of points here on this slide. So just looking on the left side of the screen there, investments into Indonesia's manufacturing sector grew 52% in 2022 on the previous year. That's significant. And one of the things, though, that we saw was this concept that the government has set up around 19 special economic zones, or SEZs. Now, not all 19 are yet operational. It's still a work in progress for some, but some are fully operational, and there are a number of them that have adjacent industrial parks next to them. So these SEZs, or special economic zones, are one of the priorities that for the government, and the aim is to attract over 50 billion in foreign investment over the next decade, and particularly for manufacturing coming out of these SEZs. Another point here to make is that the report highlights, whilst there are a number of these, and we sort of have pinpointed where some of them are, where you're most likely to find automotive experience and capabilities in Jakarta and West Java more generally. There are a number of other special economic zones away from Jakarta, including one with a particularly close proximity to Malaysia and Singapore, which you'll see when you read the report. But the location of many of these zones and industrial parks is intentionally close to major shipping facilities, deep sea ports, toll roads, airports, you name it. And that is done on purpose. The other point to make here is that the size of Indonesia's manufacturing industry. In 2022, workers in the sector accounted for more than 14% of Indonesia's total workforce, and that number is expected to be maintained, if not grown, over the next 5 years. And one reason for that is that government incentives to support EV manufacture. So for companies focused on EV production with the 40% domestic component parts, offers significant tax concessions. So we're expecting to see more international players, more demand for workers, more capability uplift for the local economy. And that's a good story for others who are looking to come in and piggyback off that opportunity. The other factor here, and it was touched on in one of the earlier presentations that we briefly skipped through, is around access to nickel. It's a critical component in batteries. I'm sure many of you know that. What I didn't know or appreciate until we did this was that Indonesia actually has the largest reserve of the world's nickel. And to protect that, the Indonesian government recently moved to prevent the export of unprocessed nickel. So the result has been billions in foreign investment from Chinese as one example, but also the larger OEMs to expand their EV production facilities, alongside an ambition from the Indonesian government to be recognized as a global supply chain hub for electric vehicles. So they're not just catering to individual companies, but also looking at their broader role across the EV value chain and ecosystem. So you can almost see a deliberate choice here from the government to expand and grow the local industry for EV batteries and their production, in part or full, of the vehicles themselves. The other interesting factor here that we found, and when we did sort of a bit of a side-by-side comparison to other Southeast Asian countries, is the relatively low wages. So you can see some indicative points we made in that comparison table on the right side of the screen, and I won't go through each one, but there are several factors that we looked at. I've mentioned wages already, but also size of the sector. It's the contribution of manufacturing to GDP growth. It is one of the most significant contributors in the country, and also worker rights and freedoms. And this is something that, you know, I would encourage people not to discount or overlook. Certainly here in Australia, we have modern slavery legislation where, you know, businesses of a certain size, certainly not startups, but need to understand, you know, where there might be modern slavery or evidence of slavery or diminished worker rights in their operations and their supply chain. And when we look at some of those dimensions that are really important to preventing modern slavery, we know that economic freedom and worker rights, which we are seeing in Indonesia, is an important consideration there. So when you're thinking about workforce as one thing, in Indonesia, our research suggests a ready-made workforce population that knows manufacturing first and foremost. You know, there is already on-the-ground knowledge and experience in automotive manufacturing, and that is evidenced through the presidents of the international OEMs we saw on the previous slide, and which is now, you know, really only increasing. Number two, another thing to think about is having the right skills, you know, continuing to build skills and capability locally. We know that both government and business is committing to do more of this, and particularly towards extending advanced manufacturing capability. And that's one area where we expect to see continued focus. Lower energy costs, you know, this is a big factor for us in Australia and one of the biggest prohibitors of manufacturing at scale in this country. Indonesia's electricity costs are well below the global average and are in fact the 8th cheapest in the world out of a recent study of 100 countries. Indonesia's global competitive ranking this year was 34 out of 63 countries that were surveyed. That is a 10-point increase on last year, where the country was ranked 44. Ease of access to key export markets, you know, think not just about, you know, proximity to Australia, which is obvious, or the oceanic region, but Asia more generally. If you're a startup or an entrepreneur in the sector and you know your target market, you can imagine there being strong interest in our wider region for this sort of innovation. And I think the final point, and you know, why we're here today really is, you know, recognizing the increasing economic cooperation between Australia and Indonesia that facilitates the kind of cooperation and opportunity we're talking about here today. We have two really important trade agreements in place that help facilitate closer ties and trade between our two countries. And what we hope to do with this report was to light that spark for people. I'm not here to convince you necessarily, but just to showcase that there are options. There is an alternative to manufacturing onshore in Australia or other countries that may have, you know, traditionally been known for automotive manufacture in Asia. Our research showed that things are shifting. Automotive companies are diversifying away from Thailand and Vietnam. And I guess my point to all of you is maybe they're onto something. Final slide that I just wanted to step through, if we can just shift to the next one, was just to kind of give a sense of market entry strategies. I'll just wait for that slide to come up. Having some technical issues. Oh, there we go. So we go into this in a little bit more detail in the report, but I think the question is, if you are a startup or an entrepreneur or you have a small business in this space and you're thinking, well, okay, this all sounds good. How might I do this? Well, this is one of the reasons we have Catalyst, is to help make that connection. But on the ground, some of the ways that you might think about getting involved in the market and looking to manufacturing in Indonesia as an alternative to what you're currently doing now. We've kind of put up 3 scenarios here that you might broadly consider. Now, all of these, whatever your decisions, whatever your business choices are, they obviously require you to do your own due diligence, I definitely recommend visiting local manufacturing sites. Meeting workers is important, understanding what's happening on the ground, reassuring yourself of the quality. I'd be telling you to do all of those things, whether we were talking about Indonesia or any other country. So doing your due diligence is really important. What we're doing here is just showing you some of the ways that you can think about this. So hiring subcontractors on the ground and outsourcing specific manufacturing tasks is just one way you could think about doing this. Striking up a JV is another way. So we are seeing that already with some of the larger players in this space, and particularly between the larger OEMs and battery manufacturers, particularly in Indonesia, because of that rule against exporting raw nickel. We're seeing that collaboration line up a lot more regularly now. And then the third option is establishing your own company on the ground. Now, all of them have their pros and cons, but it just kind of, again, is intended as a placeholder to spark some thinking around what might work for you, depending on where your business is at and what stage of growth you're at. If you're at the earlier stage, maybe prototyping, very small scale, you might want to think more around the option one angle before you go full-fledged into doing a JV or something much more mature. But again, just some ideas to spark your interest. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Nathan, for the great presentation. Please do stay online as we will start our panel soon. I will turn it over to Pak David Mitchell as our moderator. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Thanks, Nathan. That was a really great presentation, and having worked with you for a couple of months on that report, a really good summary and very interesting. What I'd like to do now is moderate a panel, and we'll get the panel up shortly, and I've got a few questions for the panel, but the real interest for me today is what people in the room think about what's been said, and if they have questions of the panel, there'll be plenty of opportunity to talk to them. So I'm going to start with the people we have online. And I'm going to sit down. So, first of all, I'd like to invite to the stage Indira Daramiono. She is currently the head of the Transportation, Environment and Energy Forum at Mairastraka Transportari, Indonesia. Please come up, Indira. She's also working with Arup as an environmental consultant, and she has a lot of experience in the electrification of transport and other EV projects. Welcome. Please come and sit down. Next, I'd like to invite Raina Haryanto. He's the Managing Director of Electromotor Group, which manufacture Alva, and he's had various roles in Indonesia in the business of transportation. I'm really awful at doing introductions. But he's a civil engineer, and we met quite a long time ago when he worked at SMEC, as he reminded me this morning. And some of our audience actually own an Alva, and I said that, you know, if there was an issue, they should take the opportunity to talk to Raina today. Welcome to the stage. Thank you. And lastly, I'd like to welcome Andy Pratomo. He's the head of product at Electrum, and Electrum is a joint venture between GoTo and TVS, developing the EV two-wheel ecosystem. And you might have seen the Electrum bikes around, and I'm really interested to speak to him about all of the sorts of issues that they've discovered. Thank you, Andy. Please sit down. And we also have some people online. So Nathan, we could put back up again, and Nathan needs no introduction from Deloitte. But we also have Brent Dankesreither, and he's the head of Newco Automotive, which is a new business in Australia that would be interested in revitalising Australia's manufacturing in automobiles, but particularly EVs. So welcome, Brent. Thank you, there you are, we can see you. Thank you very much. Krista, do we have Kane and Larry? No. All right, so we had another member of the panel, but technically they haven't arrived. But if they do, we'll let you know. So thanks, guys, for coming. I thought I would ask, what I'd like to unpack today is really, Australia is full of people that would like to manufacture all sorts of electric mobility products. And I know that having been here for a while, Indonesia is a country that likes making things and assembling things and has a workforce. And I'd like to explore how that might work. So I think one by one I'll ask you what it is that you guys have been doing, a little bit about your experience. But maybe I'll start with Brent online. Brent, can you tell us a little bit about what the aspirations of Newco Automotive are, and you know what you think about Indonesia?
Sure, David. Thanks very much for this opportunity. We're a little bit different because we were created with a purpose, and that purpose is to restore sovereign manufacturing to the people of Australia, and we also hope to deliver significant value to the people of Indonesia. And we're going to do this by returning the apex manufacturer, which in any advanced economy, which is automotive. And we can do this because we already have a global reputation in a global niche of significance, which is a large, high-performance, high-technology vehicle, and we're already globally renowned for it. What's changed is that we can now use, currently not seen in the automotive market, highly flexible design, engineering and manufacturing practices to bring the best thinkers from Australia's research sector into practice, into fulfilment. In Australia, our plans are significant. We plan to manufacture about 300,000 vehicles for numerous global niche markets. And the nature of Australia is that these will be high value vehicles, and we'll be creating around about 250 to 300,000 high skilled jobs, and around about 2.5% of GDP to Australia's economy. And when automotive finished manufacturing, largely that disappeared. We have some plans for Indonesian operations, which we'd love to investigate. They're slightly different, but we believe they'll deliver around about double those benefits. We've done it before. So the principles of Newco, we founded Holden Innovation, and Holden was a very successful automotive manufacturer. And our successes in that scope included creating an e-Commodore more than 20 years ago, when we were told that the world didn't need that. What we needed was more V8s. So we're a little bit ahead of the curve there. But I think more importantly, what we're able to do is to design and deliver an all-new vehicle, not in 7 years, but in 23 weeks. So that's 90% faster than today's practice. And we did that by ignoring best practice from the global automotive players and doing it the Australian way. I think what we like about Indonesia is because, well, if you stand in the north part of Australia, you can almost skip a stone and hit Indonesia's borders. And I don't know why we haven't been more involved with ingratiating ourselves with Indonesia, but we need to be. And current environments such as geopolitical issues, COVID and so forth, and the green evolution just make it really obvious. But I think what's really special is that we really think, standing in Australia looking at Indonesia, that Indonesia is really well placed for the global automotive revolution. And we actually think we actually want the next Hyundai to come out of Indonesia. And my colleagues, they had significant involvement in Korea when Korea was going through its evolution. And we think that Indonesia is really well placed to do that again. So it's a great opportunity for us to put our thinking and our name out there. We're keen to engage with Indonesian government and private enterprises, and I think it's a fantastic, as Nathan mentioned, it's a once in a generation, probably once in a lifetime, probably once in an epoch type of opportunity that two nations that have, I think, 50% of the globe's nickel and other important rare elements have to take real control.
Thanks, Brent. That's great. I understand we have Larry online. Logging in. We don't have Larry online, but we will. Maybe I might direct a question to Indira. You've been sort of involved in the transportation market more broadly. Could you tell us a little bit about your background and what you do and what you think about the sector, and then also maybe tell us, where you think that the market in general in Indonesia is heading?
Yeah, thank you, Pak David. Very interesting report from Catalyst written by Pak Nathan and you. I read it and really useful information we got. I recently worked for IA-CEPA and before joining ARUP, and developing a report on electric vehicle in Indonesia. Basically, it's focusing in public transport, so bus, also ride-hailings industry. So based on the report that I wrote, we are finding that the ecosystem Indonesia needs a lot of cooperation with other countries to develop these electric vehicles, and this include the building the capacity for the manufacture in Indonesia. We have recently the development for two-wheelers, and then I think Alpha and Gesits and others, Salis for example, and Gojek also develop Electrum and will develop its ecosystem. And I think that's interesting. And also for four-wheelers, there's Bluebird that started to develop the taxi electric fleet, but they're still buy from CBU, completely built up. And also what is needed is bus industry, because we actually want to have more buses, electric buses. It will shift people from private vehicles to public transport, reduce congestion, for example, like in Jakarta. So that is what we are focusing on right now, on development of public electric bus. And recently in ARUP, I also work on developing the electric bus in Bali, Sarbagita, with Kiat, the infrastructure cooperation between Indonesia and Australia. And there we see the strong will and political will of government in Bali to develop the electric bus. They also willing to have the action plan to reduce greenhouse gas emission, and there they have the target to increase the number of not just two-wheelers and four-wheelers, electric two-wheelers and four-wheelers. They also support the development of electric bus in Bali. So that's what I see is the government have a strong political will to develop the electric bus and shifting. But the challenge is right now in Indonesia there's ICE manufacturers that is very slow in shifting to electric vehicles. I think that's also considered the supply chains that they have. They have to change all the supply chains, and also related to job, maybe there's potentially like a layoff, because the electric vehicles needs a more simple equipment rather than ICE vehicles, something like that. So that's a challenge that Indonesia face, and also the total cost of ownership for four-wheelers and two-wheelers is still high, the upfront cost. The government is trying to provide subsidies to people so they can buy electric vehicles, and also not just new vehicles, but they also government also support the conversion of two-wheelers from ICE to electric vehicles. But the workshop, the store repair shop is still limited in Indonesia, so it needs to be expand more. I think that's from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Bu Indira. Very, very interesting and insightful. And that gives me the perfect segue. You know, we know that the Indonesian two-wheel manufacturing scene is dominated by traditional ICE vehicles. So, Pak Rania, you're the managing director of Alva, which is, you know, a motoristic, an electric two-wheeler. Tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing and your plans, and then maybe we could touch on some of the manufacturing issues that we find.
Thank you, David. Firstly, actually, it's great to actually come back to be part of AIBC, IABC, event. I recall the last time I did this, it was in Bali, way before COVID, and I was actually in different citizenship. I was Australia, now I'm Indonesian, and different industry as well. I was talking about infrastructure, because that was my role when I was part of the government of Indonesia, and now here I am talking about EV. But when we talk about Alpha is a startup company, and actually great to actually hear, the report of Deloitte talking about startup. Why is actually a startup? I think more and more in Indonesia, when we talk about new entrepreneur, I think same thing with my colleague next door as well. All company put an effort to set a startup. Why startup? Of course, there's plus or minus. But for us, Alpha Auto started about 2 years ago, the ideas. And I was part of the group that actually building the company from scratch. In terms of the work or the scope of work that we do, interesting what I hear, the presentation by Brad in terms of Newco. But we started 2 years ago when we have an idea. We see problem in Indonesia talking about ICE, net zero carbon, and suddenly we realized that when we talk about automotive in Indonesia, one of the largest one is actually on the two-wheeler. So we have this idea to not just selling two-wheel EV, but we want to shape the nation, shape the world, and basically we decide to start by introducing all the way upstream and downstream approach. Means that we start from designing the product, manufacturing the product ourselves, distributing, and of course at this point we're actually mostly working by ourselves to actually introduce our product to the market. So last year, around August last year, we started to launch our brand and our first product into the market. In parallel, what we do is actually we build our factory. So by November last year, we have a full in-operation factory that assemble the bike, and this factory has a capacity up to about 100,000 units production a year. And how we build this factory, when we talk about one of the best practice that we adopt, we actually combine interesting Indonesian resources, and we thinking outside the box. And with that, we're actually combining the technology and also the resources itself. And we realized that, as pointed out by the report, that when we talk about manufacturing capability, it's growing. But if we talk about manufacturing capability in EV, it's new industry. No one do have the true experience on manufacturing EV. So we have to build it from scratch. But we're quite lucky. By November last year, full operation, we delivered the product into the market. And in parallel with that, we actually built the second product, which we introduced May this year. A product called Alpha Chair4. This Alpha Chair4, I can tell you, that's 100% Indonesian made. By design, assembling, but I have to say, by parts, it's not. In terms of local content, we already reached approximately around 60% local content. And when I say 60%, it's not us building all the part manufacturing by ourselves, but it's all about sort of finding the right partner, finding the right strategic partner to collaborate, to deliver the parts. The remaining, basically because the Indonesian industry do not have the capacity. So in terms of what's the plan towards the future, I think no-brainer, because at this point, we already raised our Series B fundraising. And as per last month, I think we probably nothing with, with Electrum with nothing, but at least for us, as per today, we are company with valuation above $100 million US. And our plan towards the future this year is about expanding ourselves across Java, Bali. Next year, across Indonesia, and we are actually in the process to homologate our bike to be accepted globally. That's one of our plan. Of course, the second plan, when we talk about automotive industry, the trend in automotive industry, you need to start to introduce new products almost every second year. So while we work on the sort of the commercial side, our R&D team just keep putting an effort to pretty much introduce a new product. And when I say new product, I think we understand that next year we have to start to use another product to keep ourselves sustained in the market. I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Rania. That's very interesting, and I'm going to come back later and ask you questions about mobility and workforce. But while we're on to rulers, Pak Andi, could you tell us about what you're doing at Electrum, and maybe some of the challenges that you faced, and then we have Pak Larry on screen, and we'll talk to him, and then we'll come back and start rolling around the panel with some more questions.
Sure. I think to start with, right, Indonesia, I mean, Electrum and Alva, in a way born because the market opportunity in Indonesia is huge, right? So we have about 125 million motorcycles on the road, and then we sell about 6 to 7 million new vehicles a year, and EV penetration is less than 1%, right? So that's present a very, very large opportunities of market, right? And that's I think fundamentally because there's market, then that's why we're here, right? So I think at Electrum, our goal is so the company was conceived when I was at Gojek, right? The idea is quite simple. How do we bring more sustainable and more affordable mobility to on-demand ride-hailing drivers, right? And our learnings is a bit different than actually, coming in with R&D. We start launch with a pilot, so we know how to ride. What are some of the biggest pain points of these drivers, right? And through that, we find that one of the biggest pain points of EV adoptions is number one, performance. Some of that vehicles that are available is subpar if you compare to ICE, right? And then there is inadequate infrastructure, because households in Indonesia typically only have small power. You can only draw up to like 1.3, 2 kilowatt at any given time, and you share it with other electrical devices, right? And then third is about price parity, right? And we at Electrum is trying to solve these pain points by introducing bikes that are better in terms of accelerations, in terms of price, and then we introduce a swappable battery concept so that it removes frictions when it comes to charging. And then soon we will also build a larger ecosystem base of these batteries across Jakarta, right? So I think that is on Electrum. I think talking about this context of Indonesia and Australia, and I think something that probably we should reflect, and I just do some quick research before having this panel tonight, is I just realized that Indonesia and Australia is the largest nickel holder in the world, right? Lithium, and lithium combines, right? So we are, the two of us combined is larger than the next 10. So question is, how do we leverage that, right? And I think that's you know, as we go into this more in depth today, I would definitely learn a bit more about that with the fellow panelists here and the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Andi. That's a very interesting observation about nickel and lithium. It comes up again and again and again, and I'm not sure where it's going to go, but you know, it's an obvious dynamic that one would take advantage of. Online we have Larry Hirsch and Kane Teleski from Teleski EV, and we've been talking to, and we have Lavesh from Teleski in the audience, and we've been talking to Teleski EV on and off for about the last 12 months, and they have very ambitious and interesting plans in EV manufacture. And Larry, would you like to tell us what Teleski EV would like to do and what's its vision?
Great, thanks David. Well, hi everybody. Hello everybody, I'm Kane. That's it. So sorry we jumped in a little bit late, but yes, we're very excited because we do have a electric supercar called the Teleski Venturo, and I guess what's reasonably exciting about it is we're making the body out of hemp. So we do have that full sustainable, recyclable part going for us, and that is, you know, a lot of people are surprised about the strength of hemp and the capacity of hemp, but it's been going on forever. Henry Ford made the Model T Ford out of hemp originally, but the steel manufacturers and the cotton manufacturers put a stop to that because they were so strong. So going back to hemp is probably where we're going, and we're excited that we could be growing our next set of cars as we speak. So yeah, Kane's background for the last 30 years has been making beautiful replica classic cars, and been doing that really well. So I guess one of our fundamental principles is to make affordable supercars that take your breath away, and are safe and exciting and affordable to everybody else. So we don't have a brand loyalty like the Ferraris and the Lamborghinis, so we can probably have a very different price point. And you know, we all have battery capacity, so we're not looking at fossil fuel differences in motors. We're really just looking at the battery capacity to improve the performance of a vehicle. So I think for us, we're really excited about it, and I guess we also think there's a lot of opportunities in different financial models to assist more people to get into the affordable supercar space. So I think that's probably us, and obviously we would be very excited to work in conjunction with a country like Indonesia, where the price of labour and maybe even parts and so on is that much lower than here in Australia where costs are quite significant. So we're excited, but you know, the raw materials come from here, but the labour costs a fortune, so you tend to do everything overseas. We will continue to do a lot of our R&D, and introducing new models will come out of Australia, and we'd certainly do that to the Australian design requirements. But we would be looking to completing the mass assembly overseas. So that would be our position. So Kane might want to say a few words. Young Kane?
Well, Larry said 30 years, I wish it was, but it's been 45 years involved in cars. And as Larry mentioned, from custom cars, performance cars, racing cars, now electric cars. In terms of hemp, nothing new. It's been around for a long time. In fact, my great-grandparents used to deal with hemp in 1900s. So hemp has been around for a very long time. When it comes to the electric technology, I think everybody knows today that electric vehicles technology is nothing new. It's been around for quite a long time, and it's available to everyone. So it's not that anybody can say, I've got a better electric car than you have. It's how much money you want to spend. And as you probably know, there are electric cars selling for $2 million, and there are electric cars selling for $20,000, even $10,000. So it depends what you want in an electric car. Do you want the car to be a performance car? We all hear about 0 to 100 in 1 second, 2 seconds, and we hear 0 to 100 in 10 seconds. So as I remember olden days in the 70s when I was doing my mechanical days, to say every kilowatt is worth $1,000. So if you want your car to be 200 kilowatts, well, you pay a lot of money. So when it comes to electric cars, it's exactly the same. Depends what you want. So what we are trying to do is get the supercar, which is the first electric Vincero that looks like a supercar, performs like a supercar, but because of our experience over the many, many decades, we're trying to simplify it where dreamers out there can say, well, I can drive a supercar, electric supercar, but I can only spend $150,000, $200,000 instead of spending $500,000, $1 million. So that all comes down to our experience. The other thing is, because I had so much experience in cars, we were awarded conformity of production, which means we have to comply with all the rules and regulations according to the Australian Transport Department. And that conformity of production can be used anywhere in the world. And I think most listeners today will agree that Australian rules and regulations are one of the strictest rules worldwide. In here, what you say you do, you have to do it better. So we were fortunate to do all this. The only unfortunate thing is we are in a part of the world that labor is extremely expensive, and we are far away from the reality. We are far away from the real world. So hopefully in a very near future, we get partners, friends, Indonesia, around the other Philippines, Malaysia, where we can be able to get the labor down and the technology maintained and the safety, because wherever we go, we will apply with the Australian rules and regulations, which is renowned and recognized by worldwide. And I would love to put my 45 years experience into other vehicles like SUVs, sedans, which we're in the progress of actually completing those two models as well. And limousines, well, 82, I built the first longest limousine in Australia. In fact, Perth had only 2 stretch limousines, and one of them happened to be mine. In 94, I built the longest super stretch limousine, 6-wheeler, which is currently still driving today. It was a Ford Fairlane. Those days, it was the Rolls Royce. So hopefully, once we get into this world of electric cars, we can start getting SUVs, limousines, commercial vehicles, other commercial vehicles. So we are definitely giving our best, and I have excitement to go all the way. I hope that gave you a little bit of information.
Lovely, thank you, Kane, and thank you, Larry. Now, just checking, on the wall behind you, is that a hemp panel prototype or no?
That's a hemp.
You guys are worrying me. A rattan car, fantastic. Look, while we're talking about, like you guys, we've talked for a long time, and and I didn't put you up to this, but you've really put up the cost of labour in Australia as an issue for manufacturing. So let me go back to Brent, who has a stated aim of, you know, reinventing sovereign manufacturing in automobiles in Australia. And my question to Brent is, you know, is it possible? Like, isn't it just too expensive to do this stuff in Australia now? You're on mute. Can we get, no? Try again, Brent.
Can you hear me now?
Hear you now.
Okay. Not sure what happened then. Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're good. So just a comment on, can we really afford to make cars in Australia with the cost of labour?
Yes, we can, and one of our stated aims is that we will do things very differently. The Taliski EV people said that Henry Ford used hemp, and really, if you look at the way that automotive vehicles have been manufactured, it hasn't changed a great deal since Henry Ford started to make things. What they've really done is replace a person with a robot. What we're proposing to do is quite radical and all new. Incredible flexible manufacturing that allows us to build up high-skilled people to operate and to get the most out of manufacturing facilities, rather than relying on the cheap labour, which was a requirement of the past. And I heard with interest at the start that Indonesia, and I've also read as well, that Indonesia's got a stated aim of increasing its household income. And to do that, there's plenty of excellent case studies throughout the world, including Singapore and Taiwan, where you start to improve the skill of your labour, not how cheap they are. So that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to do that in Australia, but then also to try and transfer that knowledge and skill base into Indonesia, because yes, it might be an asset at the moment to have cheap labour, but it's certainly not the Indonesian people's aim to remain the cheap source of labour going on. And we think that we can be part of changing that, because Australia has to do it already. Otherwise, we won't be able to make anything. And we know how to do it. We've done it before, and we think we can help Indonesia to go on that journey as well.
Thanks, Brent. I'd like to come back to the Indonesian side of the panel now, and Rainier, I'm going to ask you a question about essentially skill mobility. So we have in Indonesia an enormous number of people who know how to make motorbikes and know how to make cars, but particularly ICE cars. And you're, and Andy, and you're asking them now to come and make electric vehicles. And can you tell us a little bit about, and in fact in Australia, I hope, because we invited a few of them, that there are people who are looking at us now going, well, I'd like to make electric vehicles as well, and maybe I could make them in Indonesia. So what do you think about workforce mobility? Are those people going to be able to transfer their skills from assembly lines in Honda and Suzuki to assembly lines in Alva and Electrum, and do they want to?
The quick answer, yes, that's the quick answer, right? But let me share a bit about Alva. When we pulled together the team, none of us, except one person, been exposed to EV. The rest are not. So we pulled together a team from, you mentioned anyone that you've been mentioned in there, GM, Honda, Suzuki, and even in Alpha, it's not just two-wheeler, four-wheeler people we pulled together into the Alpha. And as I said before, that we managed to actually make a factory in full operation in very short time. And when I talk short time, from the day that we decide to actually install the equipment, train the people, and do a number of trial running, it took us solidly about 5 months to make it everyone quite comfortable and capable to actually design, manufacture a two-wheel EV. But it's coming down to the concept of capability. If you're seeking for someone with full requirement to actually meet the need of your certain sort of demand for EV, you will never have it. But the principle that we have is actually people do have the basic knowledge. People do have the basic experience. It's all about, it's similar like building a project. Because as you mentioned, my background is civil engineer. I was building infrastructure project, Australia, worldwide, Indonesia. And we always face the similar issue. We do have the experience, but every single project is a new project. What you can bring in is actually your past experience, your past capability, and with that you train yourself together as a team, part of the team, and deliver. So that's why, as I say, like, yes, it can, but it's not just simply about hiring people and expect them to just deliver. It will require a lot of effort on number one, the brainstorming side. The second part is actually the knowledge building as well, either through training or other matters. So, yeah, I can't say more. Maybe Pak Andi, because Pak Andi, I know, is actually building something as well as we speak. While, to be frank, I mean, I'm also learning from Electrum how they build it. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Rainer. I think, thank you for the kind words, right? I think Pak Rainer mentioned something about, the manufacturing side of things. Maybe I can share a bit more on the R&D side of things, right? I think reflecting this also to me personally, right? Talking about skill mobility, right? I'm not an engineer by educations. I major in business. I started my career in oil and gas, and then moved into consulting, and then to tech startup, right? So you start seeing that, there is no silver linings in terms of, what is my career, right? So I think what I learned is there are some skill sets that is applied throughout, right? And thus I think there is a common theme in Indonesia. There are people who's quite spend here and there sometimes and get a bit of a time, and then they're ready with the skill set to accept new challenge, right? And when we started Electrum, I think none of us, similar to like Alva, none of us came from actual EV automotive background. We just learned along the way on how it should be and how it suited the market, right? So I think we recognize as the industry is developing, we recognize the importance of empowering our tier 1, tier 2, and SME suppliers. Like in R&D, we've been lucky. We're working together with I think actually my friends here is Catalyst, right? And there's also other SMEs like Spora and Quest. How do we empower small, medium enterprises? That is eventually is the core or the foundation to create a robust, dynamic automotive ecosystem, right? So I think if we're talking about business opportunities between the two countries, right? There are huge opportunities. How do we empower and create strong SMEs so that the industry becoming alive, right? I think we should really ought to look at that and figure out how do we best and most efficient help these industries.
Thank you, Pak Andi. I completely agree that you know, that the ecosystem is important. And maybe Bu Indira, I might throw a question that you may or may not be able to answer, but you know, if you think about Australian companies that might be looking to enter Indonesia, what do you think that they'll find? Do you think that they'll find the sorts of suppliers and prototyping and people that they're looking for? I'm reluctant to talk to the two manufacturers because these guys aren't interested in making things for other people because they have their own business. So I'm turning to you as an independent person.
Yeah, thank you, Pak David. So maybe back to the ecosystem, like I mentioned before, there's needs for charging, and the heart of the electric vehicles itself is the battery. So like Pak and Andy mentioned before, Australia have a strong sources of lithium, and Indonesia have strong sources of nickel. And right now, I think Indonesia started to produce nickel battery in Sebuku Island from Sebuku Island in Kalimantan. So I think there's a good business opportunity. And also, I read that Indonesia Chamber of Commerce started to talk to Australian Chamber of Commerce how to cooperate, how to merge this resource, but I don't know what is the follow-up after this, after that discussion, whether there's an MOU or something like that, how do these two countries can cooperate on
recording stopped.
Battery. Because I think battery is very important, and right now I think it's not like just the
recording in
battery,
progress,
but also like how to design a battery pack that is useful and smaller, and also like not that heavy, so it's easy to lift for two-wheelers, for example. Because battery swap, I think it's like the solution for the expensive upfront costs. So people can do like a subscription of battery swap to solve this upfront cost for two-wheelers, but also for four-wheelers. And I think the research and development is very important for this, for developing the battery. So it's not just one battery company in Indonesia, but maybe Indonesia and Australia can develop several battery companies. So it will be like a competitions to lower the price of battery. Yeah, I think that's my side.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. So I think just to add, right? I think like I mentioned earlier, there are as we call it bengkel rumahan or house workshops, right? Where you can design, where you can create prototype, right? In Indonesia, I think the question is how do we give them the stage, you know, so that they can showcase what they can do, right? I think one of the key challenges they have also is you know, how do I upskill and upgrade, and a lot of this has to do with access to resources for content or you know, some education materials, right? Some financing, right? And also access for market. You know, how do we facilitate you know, these small individual workshops for opening up market and opportunities outside Indonesia, and where they could need facilitation such as, you know, trade shows, IP rights, protections, and whatnot.
I just want to add one thing as well. Actually, I just want to correct your statement, David. We as a business owner, you say that we don't, it seems to be like we don't want to form any collaboration. Interestingly, why, I'm just starting with Alpha, why we can grow that far? Because we collaborate. Even at this point, you know, there are a number of EV players, not probably on the production side, like even with Pak Andi, we collaborate. And I mean, not talking only collaboration, at least for Alpha, not collaboration at the level within Indonesia. We collaborate with number of companies globally. Because of what? Because we realize that, at least from the two-wheeler point of view, there are 100 parts that needs to be designed, developed, researched, in order to be integrated to create one bike. And I think this is when, if you ask the question in terms of what kind of opportunity that Indonesia and Australia can sort of have, is actually not looking only just simply just designing a bike or designing a car, because there's parts that needs to be developed, and there's a lot of integration can be created between the two countries basically. And at least from this is more personal point of view, is this is a EV market is quite disruptive market, and if we want to proceed, you cannot just run by yourself. You have to join forces to ensure that we together contribute to the industry, and therefore the industry can grow.
I'm delighted to be wrong. I think this is a really good opportunity to throw the panel open to questions from the audience, both here and in Australia. Is there anybody here on the floor that has a question for the panel, either here or in Australia? Max.
Hello.
Just say who you are first.
Max Stratton, I'm from Australia. Nathan mentioned in his Deloitte report about low energy costs and how that was a advantage for Indonesia. In Australia, we're experiencing high energy costs, and as a result, a lot of processing plants are closing down. Are you experiencing higher energy costs in Indonesia? Do you think that's something we need to be worried about as the transition to renewables and net zero future happens?
I can see Boo Indira nodding here, so maybe she can start and Pak Rainier and Andy can follow up.
Yeah, thank you, Pak David. Thank you, Pak Max. Very interesting questions. So basically, in Indonesia, the energy is still subsidized, both for fossil fuel and also for electricity. But last year, in 2022, our national budget, APBN, is increased like into 400 trillion, I think, and before into 2020 it's only 150. That like 3 times increase due to the fossil fuel price that should be bought by government because of the war in Ukraine, and also that's right now also what happened, and it different if we use electricity. The cost or the price of electricity is quite stable, and it's still subsidized by the government. So I think if Australia want to have like established manufacture in here or build manufacture in here, would be benefit because of this electricity cost is still cheap. I think that's from me. And if you want to build renewable energy, it's also open, but there should be like MOU with the national electricity company, with PLN. Yeah, I think that's possible. Thank you.
Max, thank you for the question. Interestingly, you asked the question because I think the challenge is not about high or low, as Bu Indra mentioned in the beginning. The challenge, if you talk about EV and ICE, the total cost ownership. At this point, this is our observation. The total cost ownership is not crossed yet. Why is that? It's not because of the energy cost. It's purely because battery. If you look to ICE, I always give an analogy where in ICE, you only think about fuel. With fuel you buy on day to day means it becomes your operational expenditure. But when you convert to EV, suddenly that OPEX becoming CAPEX and OPEX. And as long as the TCO match, I think the issue of EV is not there. Of course, there's a second issue when people talk about high cost and low cost. A bit of thinking, I was actually sitting in a panel probably about a couple of days ago. The question is not high energy or low energy. The question is about what do you think, in Indonesia at present, people, the government or anyone still using fossil fuel as an energy. Is it a concern? And for me, if people bring it into that level, it's coming back to, I think, almost similar principle between Electrum and Alpha. What is the biggest issue we try to solve? For us, it's net zero carbon issue that we have to face. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. Good question. I have a couple of. Oh, did you want to make a comment, Pakandi?
Yeah, just a quick comment, right? I think when you talk about whether price gonna go up in the short terms, right? Maybe another angle to look at it is our electricity by default is in excess of supply, right? We have hovering somewhere between 30 to 40% reserve margin, which is quite high in the region. So we do have some room for demand to grow before price start to go up fundamentally. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Indonesia's going to undergo an enormous transition, and part of that will be pressure to make products that have been made with renewable energy. I was just, this is always tricky because I've got guys online and then they disappear. I don't know whether Brent or Larry and Kane wanted to make a comment on energy costs in Australia, which at the moment are, no, I've got a shake of the head. Larry, Kane, and also thank you, guys. I've got a couple of questions off online. So this one's for Pak Andi and Pak Raina from Rahman. Have you worked with or been involved with universities for your R&D? If so, what do you think? And in the future, how will you involve universities, academia for your product and technology development?
Thank you. Answering Pak Rahmat's question, we do work, at least from Alpha, we do work with university. What kind of work that we do is all related with R&D on certain part development. Again, when we talk about two-wheel EV, we're not talking about chassis, but when I talk about electronic, it's one of the emerging technology. When we talk about battery, for example, I recall last year, we're only talking about one type of NCM. Suddenly, out of stretch 12 months, on the top of my head, there are 3 new battery technology. That's only one sample. Another one that I think is quite, nowadays, it's quite a discussion in town for two-wheeler. It's about connection. A bit different with four-wheeler. I think globally it's crystal clear there are only 4 connections that typically people use. But when you talk about two-wheeler, you can't find any sort of standard connection in the world, right? And with that, you have to work with researcher. And with this, university is one of the source of, that kind of information. And at least from our point of view as well, we understand that the government actually pushing Indonesian universities. And they do have a coalition of research focusing on EV, and each university do have specialty on their R&D.
Thank you. Similar, right? I think building a grounded kind of linked with universities is important in the product dev, right? There are for Australian companies or others who's willing to work with Indonesian universities. There is a program called Kedai Reka. So it's kind of a grant provided by the Ministry of Education together with the university. So you can work together on specific topics, on specific, like Parena said, components, right? That you want to research, right? So we at Electrum at the beginning when we learn about new technologies such as controller, electric motor, and battery, we come to the university to see what is the available options here, and what are the skill sets of people that we can tap into, right? So that's how we start, and I think going forward, I do see the more importance and relevance of how the universities stay connected with the industry through having more in-depth collaboration in this kind of a R&D phase of projects.
Thank you, Pakandi. And Brent, maybe you might have a comment. Are you engaging with universities in Australia around design or battery technology? And he's still on mute.
Sorry, I was prevented by the system from unmuting. Can you hear me now?
We can, thank you. I think you're
Okay.
under overlord control.
Probably a good idea. Look, I don't know much about the university system in Indonesia. In fact, I know almost nothing, but in prior lives, I've had quite a bit to do with it. And my colleague, Dr. Laurie Spark, is well in depth with the universities. And I think that our business model requires us to do as much R&D as possible with universities. And universities like that idea, but we've figured out ways to manage them so that their great IP becomes useful. And we create a hub, a skunkworks, if you will, and we get them to apply their knowledge to the greater cause. And we found that to be really successful. For instance, earlier when I said we took the time down to create a new car, which is still one of the most, probably is the most complex consumer product made, down from 7 years of design down to 23 weeks. We did that with the universities because they had the ways that the automotive industries were ignoring, and we were prepared to take the risk and make it work. And that required us to nudge the universities, but it's definitely worthwhile. And with the pace of change, and we've heard a couple of the other speakers talk about how new products need to come out every couple of years. That's just the new norm now. And to try and do that all by yourself, I think, will be very difficult. So there's an opportunity there, but the skill set is in bringing those parties together to actually make goodness, because it's difficult to get the university to think like industry. That's what industry complains about. And the universities say it's difficult to get industry to think about anything new. So the gem comes out when you get both parties in the right environment with the right frameworks working towards a right cause. And you have a purpose, like my two-wheeled compatriots have been talking about. That makes it a lot easier to get everyone aligned towards the greater goal.
Thank you, Brent. And Larry, Kane, have you had any experience with universities? They're also under overlord control. Give it another try now.
Okay, yeah, I think we're back. As you're aware, David, we have a very strong strategic relationship with Shenzhen VT in China, and there are a bunch of amazing researchers, and they are very closely aligned with the university programs at University of Shenzhen. And Kane spends a lot of time with a particular professor there, Dr. Wong. So we are keeping up with that, and I think, as you know as well, a lot of our componentry, the controllers and the motors, etc., benefit from that relationship. So yes, I guess we do that, and in some small way we do a little bit of work with the University of Western Australia here as well to keep up. But absolutely agree, it's critical to have relationships with academic universities who keep up in this field.
Yes, I think in disruptive and rapidly moving fields that's important. Do we have any more questions from in the room? Max was the only taker. I have one more from the floor, and I'm going to direct this one to Pakandi. So this is a comment from Matthias. E-scooter bike, how is the e-scooter feature like foldable to compartment, portable to mass transit versus ICE Electrum, affordability in Jakarta? So you saw the question, which was a little bit unstructured.
Yeah.
maybe a comment, and then
Yeah.
I might throw to Bu Andira about
Sure.
other forms of micro-mobility, not just 4 and 2-wheelers.
Yeah, I think talking about 2 wheels, right? There is different segments, I would say. But broadly, I mean, the largest markets are what currently we see on the road, right? It's 100 to 110 to 125 cc equivalent motorcycle, and Indonesian use it like it is their sports sedan, it is their SUV, it is their pickup truck, right? And that is the largest segments of the market, and we at Electrum, at least, we're trying to like capture those market by providing a better alternatives in terms of the energy that it used to move, right? So that as the grid becomes greener, the whole mobility sectors becoming more kind of sustainable, right? I'm not denying there is a different segments of personal mobility devices where you use, you know, last and middle mile. There is one startup in Indonesia who produce a compact bike, and that maybe there is that segments for people who live in urban area, right? Like very urban area like Jakarta. I can just hop on a bike, fold it, and do MRT rides, right? Or KRL rides, or train rides, right? But there are also people who have limited access to mobility, so that they're really using the bike to travel from point A to point B, right? So there are different segments, and like I mentioned earlier at the beginning, the market is huge. So there is a lot way to make the transport and mobility becoming more sustainable.
Yes, early on I went to Yogyakarta and about 400 Brompton bikes came on the train with me, and I think I would like to see electric skateboards on Car Free Sunday and Sertiman. But Bu Indira, what other sorts of maybe electric mobility might we see in a country like Indonesia, apart from 2-wheelers and 4-wheelers?
Yeah, recently I think the Indonesia government and manufacturer already developed electric bus, like I mentioned before, and I think there's several company like Pupuk Kaltim or other company in Indonesia that bought this electric bus, and it still needs a lot of development, I think, because in the charging should communicate with the battery, and then I think that's also like an issue in developing this electric bus. And if there's any Australian company interested in electric bus, would be great, I think, because bus is like solving the congestion, like what happened here in Jakarta and in Bali, for example, how to shift people from private car and private motor vehicles into public transport, and this is the solutions. And about the foldable bike, I think in mass transit like subway, MRT right now, and also in Transjakarta, they provide space for a foldable bike that can be stored there, and it's kind of useful actually. And there's a ramp for people that use bike and also like maybe foldable scooters to go to the bus stop and then get into the Transjakarta bus, for example, and put it there, put their foldable bike there. Yeah, that's the electric vehicles that we develop in Indonesia. I think also not just 2-wheelers and 4-wheelers, but also electric bus. But it still needs a lot of development, trainings, and R&D, I think. Thank you.
If I may add, right, there are other sectors who at least we start seeing previously unthink about. So for example, we start looking at fishermen, right? So fishermen starting to see like, can we replace our diesel generator in the boat to become like portable battery pack. And the opportunity for them is huge because diesel price swings, right? And if you can switch that into electricity, they get a better flat rate in terms of energy, and that increases their net income, right? So there's really like small but huge impact to the particular sectors as we electrify the market.
I mean, and they're a really interesting segment because they go out at night. So they can charge their outboard all day using a solar panel, and then they can go out all night. So like it's, you know, we saw this in Australia. Like, you know, when I was growing up, you would buy a drill with a cord. Now if you go into the big box hardware stores, nothing plugs in anymore. It's just swappable batteries. Unbelievable. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's probably time for us to wrap up. I would like to thank you all, both online and in the room, for coming today. And especially I would like to thank my panel. Nathan, we didn't throw you any questions because you gave us just an amazing presentation, and I'd like to thank you for the quality of the report, which will be available now. Brent, thank you for coming online. Larry and Kane, as always, looking forward to future engagement. And my panel in the room, Indira, Pak Rania and Pak Andy, thank you so much for those insights. And, you know, I look forward to what comes out of this discussion. So thank you all very much.
Thank you so much to the panels for the insightful conversation. Unfortunately, our exciting conversation today has come to an end. Thank you all for joining in person and online. The full report, FYI, will be available on Catalyst website on Monday, 13 November. And Catalyst website is ia-cepa-catalyst.org. If you haven't grabbed the executive summary, we still have some of them in print outside, so please feel free to grab one. And we would like to thank you again to see today as our official media partner today. Thanks again for colleagues at IABC. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Thank you.
Teknologi mengubah dunia dan cara kerja, termasuk menggunakan teknologi untuk mengakses pelatihan terbaik dari wilayah manapun di dunia. IA Skills Exchange menghubungkan bisnis Anda dengan berbagai kursus dari penyedia pelatihan Australia dan menyediakan pelatihan khusus bagi tim Anda sesuai permintaan. Anda bisa memilih dari program mikro kredensial, kursus pendek, atau program panjang sesuai kebutuhan secara daring atau luring. Anda pun bisa meminta bantuan pakar untuk mendesain khusus pelatihan sesuai kebutuhan. Kursus tersedia dalam berbagai topik, mulai dari keamanan siber, perhotelan, administrasi bisnis, keterampilan digital, layanan kesehatan, dan masih banyak lagi. Semuanya tersedia dalam bahasa Indonesia dengan anggaran yang dapat disesuaikan. Majukan bisnis dan akses pelatihan kelas dunia bagi staf Anda. Hubungi Skills Exchange.
Saya selama 6 tahun lagi cari pelayanan kepada rakyat saya yang kelas dunia. Alhamdulillah 14 triliun komitmen dari Australia, 20-an rumah sakit dan ratusan klinik yang canggih itu akan dihadirkan dalam tahun-tahun ke depan.
Dan kehadiran di Jawa Barat, khususnya di Depok, ini merupakan sebuah milestone karena berbagai hospital internasional beroperasinya sudah tidak mengejar Jakarta tapi mengejar daerah yang populasi besar seperti Jawa Barat.
We're here to work with everybody that's involved in healthcare delivery in Indonesia to lift that standard to be able to provide more care and better care to all Indonesians.